Good evening, fellow heretics. Welcome back. Missed you guys. We've been on a bit of a hiatus because my computer died and it took a while to get a new one. And then kids are out of school, so couldn't make any content. But we're back, and it's all good. I'm very excited. We have a one-of-a-kind, first-time ever interview with some special creators that are waiting backstage. Let's bring them on. But first, let's watch that intro.
Hold on to your butts.
All right. Hello. Hey, let me say some hi. Hi, Riley. Hey, Will. Glad y'all could join. So welcome to the show, Sarah, Aaron. How you guys doing today?
Hi, we're doing great.
Why don't y'all take a minute and introduce yourselves to the audiences so they know who we're speaking to today.
All right. Well, I'm Sarah Tulene. I'm the executive director of the Creator Accountability Network by night. And by day, I'm a music teacher for my local school district. Aaron.
Yeah. I'm Aaron Rabinowitz. I am a philosopher by day, an ethicist, analytic philosophy background, and I'm currently wrapping up a PhD in education, and about 8 years ago got started doing public educational philosophy podcasts, and that's how I got kind of into the creator world, and very recently have been lucky enough to be involved in the development of this organization.
All right. So without further ado, you guys helped found something called the Creator Accountability Network, and that's what we're here to talk about today. There's a website on the screen. There's also a link to the below if you want to visit and learn more. But if not, you can just sit back and listen because we're going to talk about it. So what is the Creator Accountability Network, or CAN for short, and what are its goals?
The Creator Accountability Network is a nonprofit. We're dedicated to providing a restorative justice approach to ethical credentialing, reporting of unethical or harmful behavior, investigation and mediation for content creators and their communities.
All right. I met you guys, or I didn't meet you guys. Well, yeah, I met you guys. I attended the panel discussion for CAN at this last year's last year's American Atheist Convention. Heard y'all's spiel and everything, and I was very, very intrigued and wanted to know more. So we got talking, and it was definitely something I wanted to get involved with and help with, however I can. So you mentioned that. Well, first, what was the inspiration for the creation of CAN? Like, without going into like personal dramas and things, what sparked that interest?
Go ahead, Sarah.
So we have been in a lot of online communities and in-person creator communities for many, many years. And if you spend time in these communities, you start to see cycles and patterns play out time and again when you have someone who is your content creator and a large following, a lot of audience members, a lot of like love, but a lot of parasocial relationships to navigate. And sometimes you see those go wrong. And sometimes you see misunderstandings also go wrong. And sometimes you get to see it playing out over the course of years. A harmful behavior that doesn't get checked or stopped because there's really no way to do it. And so we were watching this kind of problem unfold over and over and over again. If you're, on TikTok, you have also seen this play out over and over again. So we just happened to be in the right place at the right time and met an amazing team of people, and the right idea kind of struck all that group at the same time, largely because of Aaron and the work he was doing.
I mean, it was the theme that was reoccurring to me was that everyone involved felt like they had nobody to turn to. People who had information about bad and inappropriate or unethical behavior felt like they had no one to turn to. The communities felt like they had no one to turn to when they were confronted with these situations. And creators, when individuals would come to them with information, these were usually like yourself, sort of normal individuals trying to just make content on the side of their lives and like aren't trained at all for how to deal with any of this. And so they were often felt like they had no one to turn to as well. So the goal was to create an organization that could, build trust with every one of those members of our communities, so that everyone could feel like they had a group that they could turn to with their issues, and that like it would be addressed in a ethical way that also aim to, where possible, preserve our communities, because these are really important spaces for people and they often want harmful behavior to be addressed in a healthy and restorative way that allows, hopefully, the groups to continue.
Yeah, our goals were to try to keep the communities whole and the people who were harmed from, feeling unsafe or unable to stay. We really wanted to try to foster some sort of healing between people when harm was happening. And because we wanted to create a balance, we really had to create a system that looked at both sides and the needs of both sides and cared for both sides, so that it was not unsafe for one side, but also was not like a threat to the other side. So balancing and keeping people in community became that goal.
And like we should mention, there's no real precursor that's anything exactly like what we're doing. There are lots of things that have pieces of what we're doing. So somebody in the chat, Carrie Ann, for example, pointed out this is kind of like a guild. That's an interesting comparison. Historical guilds are a little bit more messy than that. Another way to think about it, we often talk about it like ethical unionizing, that like creators are coming together, unionizing specifically in the like United States sense of like together we bargain, or alone we beg, except for ethics. We want everyone to feel like they are able to have ethical expectations, and like that those will be backed up by not just the community members but the content creators.
Yeah, no, something else I've seen on TikTok is creators who, like, baseless accusations are made against creators. Like, some of y'all may remember this. This is a few years ago. There was a trans woman who like restored houses. And so she would just do TikTok dances in like this broken down house. So people started like thinking it was weird, and they started like zooming in on little, like taking screenshots and zooming in, like, what's behind this? They have someone locked in here. And then none of that was true. And eventually that person came on and says, why does everybody hate me? I'm just dancing. What? And that person disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him. Like, so a lot of like genuine content creators who are just trying to have fun, like, are getting chased off for dumb reasons. And that's another thing that needs to be addressed that they can help with. We can get more into that a little bit later. You mentioned the can utilizes a system of restorative justice. What is restorative justice, and how is it different from other similar systems of accountability, I guess?
Sure, yeah, I'll take this one since it's in the ethics wheelhouse world. There are a bunch of different principles of justice. We think of like the classic retributive model being our eye for an eye, find out who's done something wrong and figure out how to punish them proportional to what they've done. A lot of, especially progressive individuals, will recognize the problems with that kind of approach, both that it seems psychologically suspect given what we understand now about human behavior, but also because it doesn't produce very good consequences. It produces higher recidivism rates, more antagonistic or confrontational or adversarial approaches to justice systems, which then in turn promote as little promotion of sharing of information, as little truth or reconciliation, because there's no upside to being honest in those kinds of systems. All of the problems that we see in, for example, the American criminal justice system right now. There are several other alternative principles to the retributive, things like deterrence or rehabilitation or quarantining of people who are high risk to other individuals. Restorative is just one of those models that tries to present an alternative to retributive. And the basic idea, the very simple idea, is just focus on meeting people's needs. So when a harm is caused, we want to ask, what is the need that is caused by that harm, and how do we meet that need in order to repair that harm as much as possible, both for the individual who was harmed and for the community, because harms are harms to communities. And so we need to make sure the community feels like it has been healed properly in this process. And then the individual who did the harm. This is one of the hardest parts of restorative justice for a lot of people, is you have to take seriously that human beings are like cars. They don't do things bad because they're bad. They do them because they're broken, and you have to help them figure out what the issue is, whether it's education or, behavioral or something, and get it addressed so that they don't engage in that behavior in the future. So by meeting the needs of the person who caused the harm, you also do better at meeting the needs of the people who've been harmed and of the community. People who have been harmed more frequently will say what they really care about is making sure the individual who harmed them, A, understands that what they did was wrong and how it hurt them, and B, understands not to do it again. And so I think restorative justice meets those needs better than any other approach.
Yeah. Lost my... I had like the best question in the world in my head, and it's gone now. Just imagine me asking.
As an interviewer, I absolutely know that experience. You have the best question 30 seconds into the answer, and then a minute into the answer, you're like, "What was that question?"
Well, here, I'll vamp a moment then.
Sure.
The restorative justice model also works. It's really the only model I think that could make this particular concept work, because we are asking content creators to step up and get credentialed in a way that says to their community members, I care if something that I have done has impacted you, and I would like to hear about it. You do not get to stand there and do that if the system that you're doing it under is just a giant ban hammer waiting to smash down on your head if you do enough bad things. So that's not what our organization is doing, because it can't function that way. We needed to meet the needs of both sides.
Yeah, I think we've being a content creator is it's a little bit of a different animal. I think we talked about this a little bit, like especially on TikTok. What's unique about TikTok is people become internet famous without trying to. As like YouTube, you do the grind for as long as you can, and then you slowly build up. You're chasing that kind of like a large following. On TikTok, it just happens overnight. You can wake up one morning, happened to me, like, hey, if you have 50,000 followers, what? Excuse me?
Mm-hmm.
So when that happens, there's a lot of people who don't know how to handle that, and so they make mistakes, and it's not because they're bad people. It's just because
I'll go you one further. Literally no one is prepared to handle that. There is no preparation available. Psychologically, we're not built for it. It breaks your brain, Even when it's good, it breaks your brain,
Yeah.
And we take that really seriously, that creators need help addressing this kind of influx of attention and parasocial relationships, and figuring out how to engage in ethical involvement with their community, so they are not being too personal, but they feel like they are getting to connect with people. There are a lot of really, I think, nuanced ethical issues in the modern, media landscape that we're not here to tell people you can never talk to your audience, or you can never interact with them, or you can never have a drink with them or something. But we want to help people understand the risk factors that lead to these cycles of people not understanding their relationships and ending up causing harm.
Yeah. I've seen it happen a lot. I've done it. I've said things like at the beginning that I later regret. I was like, God, that was stupid. Why did I say that? That was dumb.
Well, it's a little bit like winning the lottery. When people win bajillions of dollars, it doesn't solve any of their problems because the basic reasons that they had those problems in the first place tend to persist. So the money amplifies it. The fame and the followers that dropped in their lap overnight, when they're not prepared for it, they have the same behaviors that they started out with, and sometimes that can also lead to bad boundary setting from content creators who don't know how to protect themselves, or like when you're initially starting out, you have to interact with every one of your followers on a very personal level because you're trying to build that platform, you're trying to build those relationships that is going to sustain your content. And then when you get an influx of people and you still are trying to upkeep that mentality of like, I got to interact with everybody, I got to make sure everybody feels loved and seen and like heard, and you can really drain yourself and burn yourself out fast.
Yeah, when I first popped off on TikTok, I got just massive amounts of DMs, and a lot of people do like trauma dumping on me. And like, I'm a very empathetic person, so they'll tell me like just the most heart-wrenching story, and I'm like, oh my God. And I would do that for like 6 hours a day, and it would just I would be so bummed.
We have a family. We have essentially have like essentially like Family Feud, like walls of like the things that everyone deals with, and like trauma dumping would be on our top 5 for sure, because people want to connect to their creators and want to be seen by their creators, and their creators, like in the most genuine ways, want to see their audience and understand their audience. It's not just profit driven. I think a lot of creators really do care about their audience, and they care too much, and they don't know how to regulate their caring once things get out of hand.
Carrie's got a good question, I think you can address, Aaron. Any thoughts ever put into internet etiquette?
Yeah.
Any thoughts at all, Aaron? Any dig deep.
Etiquette.
So we can come up with something.
I sometimes avoid the word etiquette because I feel like it's the colonialist equivalent of ethics. Like it's ethics at a tea party. So like online engagement and ethics is a very important issue for me on a lot of levels. And there was a similar question from Carrie Ann about how do you teach this, and like whether it's content creators or just people in general. I do think you want to, as much as you can, address these kinds of issues early and make people aware of them, because a lot of it is that people aren't consciously aware of it, and so they get sucked into these patterns not knowing, like, where if they just knew that, hey, this is a common abusive relationship pattern, would be less likely, at least. I'm not saying they're gonna fix the problem immediately, but like it would be a little bit better if they knew those sorts of things. But I'm pretty strong on we can't put too much on individuals, because individuals are going to act the way that they kind of tend to act. What we have to do is, and this is your woke social justice systemic account idea, you got to fix the systems. There's no ethical content creation under capitalism as it currently stands. There's only vagaries of unethical content creation, and we're trying to help people navigate the like horrible pressures that capitalism puts on them during their content creation. And like ultimately, though, the goal would be helping people understand the complexities of these relationships early on, preferably before they get out of hand, so that they are a little more prepared and can see it when it's happening and can get the help they need, and like set healthy boundaries where they need to.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Titan.
Creators.
There's a joke. I'm pretty sure that's a joke question. Titan is like a mod for 1,000 different.
Here's a fun language one for you, Titan. Technically, I'm gonna push up the pen, the glasses that I no longer wear now. A parasocial relationship is one-sided. So what people normally think of today as parasocial relationships is actually called trans-parasocial relationships. When you are interacting with the creator and the creator is interacting with you in a bi-directional, though asymmetrical power relationship, that's trans-parasocial. When the creator has no idea that you exist and you're stalking them and you shoot Ronald Reagan because of them, that's parasocial. So just if people care about, like, realistically, it doesn't matter. We can call it parasocial, but what's worth understanding at least is that trans-parasocial is actually, I think, much more dangerous a lot of times than parasocial. I mostly bring this up tight just to point out that, like, the current version is more toxic because that feedback between creator and audience member enhances both the feeling of a personal relationship that doesn't actually exist and then abusive behavior that relies on and transgresses that parasocial relationship.
I'm just laughing at the comment section.
That's what happens when I engage with the comments.
I told you guys my audience is fun.
I lose people immediately. It's fine. This is fine.
Well, I don't know if your audience understands what our organization actually does yet.
We should talk about that.
Well, that's a great segue, because my next question is, if someone has concerns, if a community member wants to make a report, what are their options in doing so, and what happens once a report is made?
So maybe we want to back up a little bit and just talk about how our organization works for anybody who doesn't know. So our organization has two different wings, let's say, two different sides. One side of it is content creator focused, and what happens is content creators come to us to be credentialed, and the process of getting credentialed involves taking two trainings. One is on restorative justice and our mission statement and values and how our organization works, and our code of conduct. And the second one is on harassment and abuse prevention and bystander intervention. So they take these two trainings and then they think to themselves, okay, do I really want to push the button and become credentialed? And if yes, they do, then they push the button and are officially credentialed with us.
Which I have done.
Provisionally.
What?
It was not painful.
Okay. No, we try to keep the barrier to entry extremely low. It is free to do, free of charge. It costs you nothing.
Zero cost to creators.
So you can walk in the door. Any content creator of any size can come and take these two trainings for free, and you're not obligated. And at the end of it, go, you know what? This sounds amazing. I would love to be credentialed. Boom, done. So that's partly preventative education. So we arm our creators with kind of foreknowledge, with a code of conduct, and they sign an agreement to uphold the code of conduct and say, I'm going to prevent harassment and abuse in these ways. I'm going to, make sure that my content is more ethical than Matt Walsh's. And
well, that's a low bar.
But a bar nonetheless.
A bar nonetheless, yeah. You can't have terrible content. I mean, your content can be terrible, but it can't be terrible in certain ways. Yeah. On the other wing, we are taking care of our community members. So we have constructed a secure reporting system. You can report harassment or abuse or unethical content on our website, creatoraccountabilitynetwork.org.
There it is.
There it is. There's a form if you scroll down. Yep, boom, right there. You just give us your information and tell us what happened. Or you can call our hotline. If you scroll back up to the top of the page, I think it's up there.
Here it is. Hopefully it's not covered up by the logo.
Oh, it is. It's covered by StreamYard, but it's fine.
Post it in the chat.
Yes. If they call our hotline, they will be contacted by a credentialed victim advocate. And this person is purely just there to help the person who made the call. So they may be dealing with any, range of things could have happened. It could be an instance of harassment or abuse. They could be in a very bad place. A credentialed victim advocate has special training to help with emotional support, to help if that person needs like in-person resources. Do they need help finding a hospital? Do they need help finding a shelter? Do they need help connecting with other systems in their area? And do they need help processing and deciding, do I want to make a report with the Creator Accountability Network? What will happen if I do? That's what a victim advocate who works for us can do. And in many states, they also have legal protections so that what you say to a credentialed victim advocate can be held in confidence, meaning that they cannot be subpoenaed. Some states don't allow that, but some states do. So it depends on where you are. But that means that you can tell them something safely and confidentially. If you decide to make a report with the Creator Accountability Network, and it's about one of our credentialed creators. So credentialed creator signed up, took our trainings, signed the agreement, but something has gone amiss, something harmful happened. Our investigations team, professional investigators, will collect all the evidence. They will interview everybody involved. They're extremely empathetic and kind people who run investigations. I'm consistently just blown away by the work that they do. But they gather all the
backgrounds and extreme trauma investigations.
Yes. But gathering all the evidence before, even working through the problem is really important. And that's a step that just doesn't happen when those things are trying to be handled in comment sections, in Facebook groups, in public. Like that part gets missed all the time. So knowing all the facts beforehand is very important. We then have an ethics panel review it and make recommendations for like what were the needs that were created according to the person who made the call. What was the reason that this thing happened? What education does this person need? What impact do they need to understand about that behavior? What can help them repair the harm that was caused? What needs to be in place to make sure that's not caused in the future? And then our mediations team has those conversations with the content creator and with the person who made the call. Because again, we're focused on trying to heal wherever possible, make the person feel safe, to foster understanding, and to help that content creator and that person, again, as best possible, as much as possible, reach resolution so that your content creators community is not fractured or destroyed. The person does not end up ostracized, having to leave because everybody turned against them. All the common things that happen when people try to address something that harmed them. Mm-hmm. So those are the two wings of our organization. We're trying to prevent harm, but also address it when it happens in a restorative fashion.
And I want to... Sarah gives me a hard time for being a little too self-deprecating sometimes. I think coming from an ethics background, I'm used to people being like, well, what do you know all about stuff? So I'm very self-deprecating. And I want to apologize. Like, this is a very complicated thing, and I'm sorry it's very technical and complicated. All of it is there because we have spent the past year and a half gaming out every possible scenario we could think of that could harm an individual involved in this process in any way, and then making sure we had protections for them. So there was a question in the chat from Carrie Ann, do you have to deal with law enforcement? The answer is not yet, because we've been at this for a few months. Like, we opened our doors in April-ish, around then, right? We've been onboarding creators over the summer. We haven't had like a case go through the process yet, like an actual real case. What we have done is extensively tabletopped, and since this is Nerds and Heresy, I don't have to explain what I mean by tabletopped. We've role played our way through a bunch of scenarios where like Mostly
go.
I was a terrible content creator, and people like Sarah were people who were harmed by me, and we would like play through each of the steps of the process to make sure that we had an answer to the question of like what happens next. Because when we did it, we were like, oh, we don't have this step and this step and this step. So all of this is heavily preparatory in the hope that like it conveys the building of trust, that y'all feel that we have gamed out so many of the hard questions and have systems in place. And as a restorative system, when we haven't gamed something out, we can address that in a functional real-time kind of way, because again, the goal is just figuring out what kind of harms were caused, what needs to, have to be met. It's not a game of like, you're going to be punished, so if we don't have a rule ahead of time, we can't punish you, because that's a basic law of ethics. This is about just helping us figure out what's not right and fixing it as we go along. There's a key idea in restorative justice that like you have to accept not knowing all the answers ahead of time, because it just doesn't work. It's too complicated.
Oh yeah, we're all human. We all make mistakes.
Yeah. On the law enforcement question also, we've kind of put some thought into this. Anyone who wants to use our system to avoid having to go through law enforcement for a variety of things can do so. But our victim advocates are mandatory reporters for certain things. So child abuse is on there, imminent threats of harm or danger are on there. So there are some things, and the person who answers the phone, it's the very first thing that they will say to give you that warning is that, I am a mandatory reporter. That means that if you tell me about these few things, I am required by law to report it. And they tell you that so you have informed consent and you don't, accidentally end up triggering a system you don't want to be in. Mm-hmm. So that's important to note.
So this can all.
Well, let me just
go ahead, Aaron.
Sort of to add on to that, like, think of it this way: like we're trying to create a little restorative justice microcosm in a retributive justice world. Like we have to live within the boundaries of a system that is a strong legal system that will crush us instantly if we do not act according to its rules, and that is designed to be retributive. So there are parts of our system that are not going to gel with that system. So for example, people might be anxious about being honest in our mediation process because they're afraid whatever side of the process they're on, that is going to be held against them or used against them in a legal system down the line. And that's why we have confidentiality practices that are best practices for mediation. We have the advocates. We have all of these things in place to, as best as we can, create that safe space for communication, while also acknowledging that every individual does have to protect themselves from the larger reality that we all live in. And one of the big challenges that we are always going to be engaging with, I think, is that content creators are reasonably going to be gun shy about a system like this, because it requires them to trust, and it puts them at risk of challenging situations, whether or not they've done something right. We've done our best to, as much as we can, sort of make the system resistant to people abusing it for the sake of targeting or attacking a creator. But for a lot of people, there's very much, I think, if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality. Where, or like the way I always think of it is the everybody cuts the budget for snowplows in July. Like, unless you're right in the moment of a creator having just done something real bad and everyone feeling like they need to like get right with ethics all of a sudden, people are like, well, this sounds really good in principle, but I'm not sure I'm going to sign up until like I really need to. But then it's too late.
Well, I also think that this ties back to the law enforcement question, because I think that our organization, the people who sign up for it sort of self-select for ethics. If you sign up for our organization, it's because you care about making sure that our organization like exists and is available to your audience members, and to anybody else that you can convince to join. But you're also doing it because you actually genuinely care about your audience members. And if you have inadvertently harmed somebody or advertently harmed somebody, you want to know about it and you want to make it right, rather than not knowing and having somebody who you may be unintentionally impacted, like joining the Whisper network and having rumors spread and grow. It's a way to say to your audience members, I want you to have this. I want you to have safety and security and a third party that's not me that you can come to for help. And that's going to help me also do a good job and make sure that I don't continue a harmful behavior, out into the world. People who sign up for something like that, I imagine, hope, are less likely to, I don't know, end up in trouble where law enforcement's going to need to be involved. Fingers crossed. These are like famous last words, but I think it does self-select for people who at least care about ethics and who care about doing the right thing and who care about their communities.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of a good segue into my next question is, what if as a content creator, this may make me feel uncomfortable, like I might be accused of something that's not true, which you've already kind of enjoyed, but what's in it for me? What do I get out of this deal? Like, what's the point of me getting involved in this? If I'm being selfish, I'm not being paid. Why would I do this?
Right.
Sure. I think it's actually a very good question, and it's not about thinking of selfishness as a bad thing. Like, content creators need a reason to join this organization, because it's work, and it's also potentially like making yourself feel a little afraid. What kind of feedback am I going to get from my audience members? Like, am I signing up to have some uncomfortable conversations? Like, that's scary. So yeah, you do need to know, like, why am I signing up? So there are ethical reasons to sign up. There's, upholding a code of conduct and encouraging your listeners to also behave in an ethical fashion. You guys already do that. You set standards for what kind of jokes do we tell and not tell. How do we speak to people who are in marginalized communities? How do we listen as opposed to talking over people? Like, content creators already are setting a variety of bars. So setting a standardized one across the board for ethical behavior that, hey, we are actively looking to prevent harassment and abuse within our communities is an important one to start with. But it gives us a way to restoratively hold ourselves accountable in a way that I don't think you can any other way. So being able to have on record, like, I really missed the mark on this one. Here's the impact it had on that person. You are so much less likely to repeat that behavior in the future. Think of somebody who has been doing the same harmful behavior for 10 years and how many people they impact over that time. And what brings down the content creator at the end of all that? Every one of those people has to like they all find each other through the Whisper networks, and then they all go, oh, I thought I was the only one. I was too afraid to come forward. I thought it was just me, and I didn't want to destroy that person's content because of this one little thing. But it's happening to a bunch of other people. We got to all come forward. And that person's, career goes down in flames. That community fractures. Those people don't see any benefit from having come forward, except that they stopped it from happening to other people. Like, catching it early and understanding the impact of a harmful behavior before it has a chance to become so big, it can save your career. It can save your whole income. It can save the whole trajectory of everything you do. And it can save so many people in your community. It can keep your community a really safe and healthy place. So even though we think to ourselves, I'm wonderful and amazing, and I would never hurt a fly, we just don't know sometimes. Especially when we interact with our fans so much. Sorry, am I on a tangent here? Am I supposed to say more things?
You're great. Yeah, I think like I'm willing as an ethicist to be more nakedly self-interested about some things like you know, Sarah's still giving sort of the noble, like, what if you've done something wrong? This will help you make it right. I'm
That's
here
because
to be
those are
like,
my
what?
first two ones.
I'm like, what if you've done nothing wrong? Well, this is something we often talk about in our trainings for our creators, where we're like, look, you're a person who would never do anything wrong, like everybody, right? You're amazing and will always be ethical. What's the benefit here for you besides being a good person and helping others and unionizing ethically and all that stuff? And one of the answers actually relates back to something you were saying, and I'm gonna out you a tiny bit here, Captain. Before the live stream started, you made a crack about like opening up your DMs and like that deep sigh you take before you open up your DMs as a content creator when you just don't know. You know, my favorite version of this is a spot of feedback, you know, that's like it is a rough situation to be in, especially when you go from having 100 listeners to 100,000 listeners. The DM list gets a lot longer, and people are a lot more willing to engage with you for a lot longer because they feel like they get more out of it if you're a bigger creator. Just close your eyes and visualize that in any one of those conversations in which you feel like you don't want to continue that conversation, you can say to them, look, I'm going to set a boundary here. I don't think I've done anything inappropriate. If you believe I have, please report it to the Creator Accountability Network and they will address it and they will tell me whether I've done something unethical. Have a nice day. End of conversation. Like,
Yeah.
So much of what we see is creators feeling like they have to endlessly defend themselves from people who claim to value their content deeply, but are mostly there to tell them why they are wrong about something. And we are here to create a healthy boundary but for those individuals where they can deflect some of that attention away towards us. And like that is a valuable thing. That is a very mild version of what you were talking about, where like there is the more serious issue where sometimes someone will accuse someone of inappropriate behavior publicly. And what a creator can say in that context is, I take very seriously what you're saying. Please, I am a member of the Creator Accountability Network. Please report it to them so that we can address it through their system properly, because having it out on the internet is not going to work well. There was a good comment a little while back by Arch Radish about, you know, reality is complicated and experiences are complicated. And Sarah can tell you that my favorite ethics catchphrase is it's complicated. It really is. A lot of ethical interactions are very complicated. I spend a lot of time in our, you know, organization, and Sarah does too, writing these really hard hypotheticals so that people can understand how complicated this stuff is and make things that address that kind of nuance. But you can't do that on a Facebook wall where people are just fighting about a thing. Sarah has a really great thing she explains about how, like, inevitably people take sides in those situations and it becomes black and white and it becomes a war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, send us your hate mail. People, and you know, sometimes as a content creator, you also just don't know if your content crossed a line or not. Suddenly you've got 30 emails or 30 DMs. They're like, you know, this is kind of problematic. Yeah. And you're in a gray space where, like, sometimes the jokes are a little on the problematic side and you're like, I'm not sure where I want to fall on that. And I don't know if I'm listening to somebody who has a, you know, broadly shared perspective from a marginalized group, or if this is an individual's personal vendetta, or if, you know, it can be also hard to just parse what's the quality of the argument that I'm hearing. Being able to say to the 30 people who just emailed you, you know, I really, again, it's just like saying, I really care. Can you please report it to the Creator Accountability Network, and they will help me, you know, figure out my response. Because we can help you through ethically complex situations. We can help you parse, again, situations like that. Or we can just take some hate mail off of your plate. All your haters, just like, please go report it if you feel that I've done something bad.
Over in your chat, Carrie Ann, actually, like this is the stuff we want to do. Ethical consulting. Like, she's asking about someone who's being abusive in a chat. What do you do if you're a mod? And if someone's like calling you evil personified, like, you know, I know I just went into like it's complicated. Sometimes it's not complicated, and sometimes the answer is just simple. Like if someone's abusive, ban them, block them.
Yeah.
Whatever mechanisms your system has for addressing inappropriate behavior online, use them. Anybody who knows my work on content moderation will know that I am no stranger to the idea that it is okay to moderate content heavily when necessary. Like, people need to, like, you don't want to live in Monster Island, and people can Google that if they don't know what that's a reference to. I wrote an article about our Facebook group where we didn't have content like we didn't have moderation for a while, and it shows you what happens. So honestly, yeah, just moderate content and set boundaries. Boundaries are good.
Set boundaries.
But the problem is boundaries aren't profitable. Every boundary you set with someone in your community risks losing money. And that's the rub. And so I think it's very important to set boundaries, but I like, here's where I want to go back to it's complicated. I don't want to like sound like we're just, you know, like giving creators an easy answer, which is just block people in your communities, because sometimes like some of my audience members who have been very long-term audience members on my shows have sometimes engaged in problematic behavior with me, and I have navigated that in complex ways because I care about those individuals and also don't want to alienate them, not just for profit reasons, but for other reasons. So I want it to be like understood that like whether it comes to your creating your content or engaging with your community, we very much recognize the complexities of these issues and bring expertise to the table for understanding weird parasocial capitalist relationships. Yeah. And we want to help you. Yeah.
I will hop in on that also, because reading Carrie Ann's comments, it doesn't sound like it's a long-standing community member who just has an issue. Sounds like it's just a troll who just like wants to tell them that they'll burn. You know, people like this who pop into communities just to drop a bomb essentially and leave. They chase away other people that you do want to keep. They create a more toxic environment for other people. Nobody else wants to be around that either. So when you set healthy boundaries around the kind of behavior you're going to like accept, and somebody will not stay within those boundaries, and they say, I'm not going to abide by that. I'm going to continue to take everyone's energy and, you know, be terrible. It's okay to block that person because they're unwilling to do what is required by this community to stay and keep everybody feeling, you know, like it's safe to engage, and they're not going to waste all their time and energy. So I still say block that person. It's just my personal opinion.
But this is the like informal. So there's like the formal aspect of our system. We have a bunch of rules that cohere with our legal system, that give people various kinds of protection, that allow for the addressing of really serious issues in sensitive ways. And then we have within that a bunch of educational stuff that we take very seriously, where it's a lot more nuanced, and we want to help people understand these gray areas and complexities, and we want to help them address when they get lost in those spaces sometimes. So, you know, we need things like we have certain red lines about content. You can't engage in the promotion of anti-vaxxerism. You can't be, as Sarah said earlier, you can't be Matt Walsh, you can't be Alex Jones. But if you're not doing that, if you're doing transgressive art that is going to piss off certain people, but is, in our opinions, not bigoted or discriminatory or unethical in those kinds of ways, or promotes harassment or abuse, we are behind you 100%. We are the ACLU for you on this, informally speaking, because we recognize the need for liberty for content creators. So another thing that like creators get as a benefit from all of this is an organization that is willing to say your jokes that are really offensive to certain people are, in our opinion, not unethical, and we stand by you as a content creator.
Because there are people out there who are just interested in virtue signaling,
right,
to make themselves feel better. So they hyper analyze everything you say or do, or whatever's in the background of your video, or like that's all they're interested in doing.
And we wish we didn't have to have a content section. We went, like we have talked extensively with creators in our trainings about why we have a content section and why it's really important that we be able to say if your content is sufficiently transphobic or sufficiently anti-vaxxer, like we are going to, like remove that credentialing status, because we can't say that you're an ethical content creator in that situation. But we want to have to exert that as little as possible, right? We have that there as a necessity, but largely the content section of our code of conduct is aimed towards preserving creators' autonomy, respecting their ability to make art, and to recognize that sometimes when they make good art, they will sometimes cross boundaries they shouldn't and will need to be corrected. And it's okay to give them that correction without that being a like all or nothing. If they don't stand by the joke, they're going to get canceled forever kind of concern.
Yeah. 'Cause a lot of content creators, like you start, as a beginner and you don't know everything and you're going to make mistakes and talk about things that you didn't know everything about and step in some shit sometimes. Um, we're not an organization for perfect people. People, content creators have to be able to make mistakes and learn from them and grow. This is literally the process of being a content creator. Every good content creator learns how to give a sincere apology and how to engage with it when they mess up, so that they can state this was the impact of the thing that I said. I didn't know it at the time, but I understand it now. Like, these are important, valuable tools and skills to growing. And so we're very much not looking to sit there and like go over everyone's content and pass judgment on every joke. We want you to have the growing and learning process that is very natural and organic with your community and their feedback.
And that's how, as a content creator, that's how you kind of create job security for yourself. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Here's my proof. I'm always going to try and get better. If I mess up, I'm going to try and correct that, because I'm in this for the long haul. I want to keep doing this. So I don't want to lose my platform suddenly to some dumb shit. So yeah, tell me if I'm messing up. I have no problem with that.
One way to distinguish between retributive justice and restorative is that retributive is for perfect people and restorative is for real people. Like, we're here to help real people who like deal with the actual challenges of life. And like, yeah, we want to make this as little a burden as possible. Carrie Ann commented that they know some creators who want to share this with, and like the hardest thing right now is getting creators to take that plunge, to like accept that trust, and to like give us that trust. So, we really want to do everything we can to help out on that, but also, in my opinion, as a content creator, what gets a creator in our door is hearing from their audience that they want this, that they think that this is important for their community. And if their creator cares about their community, they will do the thing for them.
And the other thing that gets them is seeing other content creators that they know and trust have already done it. So when content creators who have very, again, maybe very little interaction with their fans, or they feel that their behavior is above reproach, I've never done anything wrong in my life, I make content about kittens, like, when they're asking themselves, why should I sign up? Part of it is that unionizing aspect of banding together, so that when other content creators see someone they know has already done it, they are more likely to trust. They are more likely to feel secure. They are more likely to feel like, oh, this is a thing that, is worth doing according to like other people I respect. So it makes it much easier for them to step in and do it also.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a perfect segue, because we're coming on the 1 hour mark, which I wanted to kind of keep it around. So my last question is to anyone who is interested in getting involved with CAN. What are some of their options, or helping accomplish CAN's mission? How can they do that?
Oh, so many. All right. If you are like, CAN has a lot of different volunteer positions and opportunities. We have a victim advocacy team, and those are people who are again, wanting to do that kind of emotional support and emotional labor with people who call who may be going through something big. So if you're somebody with lots of like empathy, that's a good one. You take a training, will cover the cost of the training, and at the end of it, you get to be a certified victim advocate, and you can do work with us, but you can also do work with other organizations in your area that need victim advocates. They are rare. So victim advocacy is a team that I will plug hardcore. Our investigations and mediations teams are looking for volunteers also. Those take a little bit more specialized like education or experience or training. But if you think you would be good for those, I would say still fill out an application for it. Investigations being like, you know, collecting information, and that might look like collecting information out of, Facebook groups, text messages. It might look like, if you have more training, doing interviews with people who have made calls to our hotline. Mediations is handling conversations that may be stressful for a content creator, handling a conversation where you have to give them education. So you've got to be a very good communicator, very good at isolating out personality from behavior. We're focusing on behavior and its impact, that kind of stuff. I'm a teacher, I do it a lot. But then on the other side, if you're like none of those things, we need a graphic artist to make our stuff not look terrible, because I'm bad at it. I'm not a good graphic designer. Our operations director is wonderful, but it's an extra hat that he has to wear.
Right.
So if we can find anybody else who wants that hat, we would love to give it to them. We need a volunteer coordinator who can make the first call to our volunteers who are submitting applications. I'm trying to think what else.
I mean, the short answer, like a too long don't read of this, is if you have time and want to help,
if you like what we do, just apply, because we'll find a place for you.
Yeah, we will find a job for you. There's enough stupid jobs in our complex system that we are not stupid. There's so many pieces to all of this that we will find something that you can do. And we want you to be part of our team because we want community buy-in for the process.
We'll put you on the ethics panel.
The other way to get involved, and as an ethicist, as a philosopher, I want all the things to be free for everyone. But I'm also having to become accustomed to the reality of all of this can't be free because we have to pay the government to allow us to exist as an organization. We have to pay people who are doing the work for our organization. So if you have additional financial resources and you can afford to help us, we are making this free to content creators because I know as a content creator, 97% of content creators make no money or lose money creating content. And so asking them to shoulder an additional financial burden for the sake of ethics is bad, is unethical. Ethics should not have a financial barrier to entry, but that means that we're not just a simple service that people can pay for. We need our communities to support our system so that we can in turn provide it for free to these creators. So we need people in these communities to be able to help us in that way. So if you don't have time, but you do have a little bit of extra, and it's very important that no donation is small enough, in the sense that
no donation is too small.
Too small, yes. No donation is small enough, right? No donation is too small in the sense that
wasn't a challenge.
Small donations reflect that the community genuinely values what we are doing. That people are willing to take the time, whatever amount of resources they have, to say, this is important to me and I want to support it. We can then point to that when the IRS wants to have us prove that we are being a beneficial organization, or just to prove that people are valuing what we are doing, and we think that it's really important.
It's a requirement too. As a nonprofit, you do have to show that a certain portion of your funding comes from the communities that you serve. So that is your way of showing that they value the service that you provide. So yeah, $5 donations, $10 donations are extremely valuable to us. So don't feel like there's a, oh, I'm not rich enough to make a giant donation. It's fine. Anything that you do helps us make our case to the IRS and to other communities as well, and helps us pay for other, victim advocacy training. We are literally putting more victim advocates into the world that there didn't used to be. And there's a great need for that.
And we believe fundamentally that like people should be able to do this work and help without being so privileged that they can, do it at total self-sacrifice. So we want to be able to have those resources for the people who are doing this work.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you guys. This is the first time y'all have done a live interview representing the channel, or the organization. So I am honored that y'all would choose to do that on mine. Obviously, this is something I'm excited about and want to take off. So keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully, myself and my audience can help that along a little bit.
We really appreciate it.
Genuinely, I don't want to just. I'm not just saying this to be nice. Individuals like you are the reason that we will exist in a year if we exist in a year, because people who have more to lose, in the sense that you're a larger target, you're a larger audience, you are putting yourself at greater risk by being willing to be a part of our system, and it creates an umbrella for a lot of other creators to feel comfortable coming in and out of the rain in this way. And so like it's more important than anything else that you can do, in my opinion. And so we very much value it. We appreciate it. We take it really seriously. And we greatly respect that above everything else at this moment.
Well, that is a great high to end on. I appreciate that. Again, thank you guys. Thank you, chat, for hanging around as long as you have. And it appears my outro is gone for some reason. So
No.
the ending is going to be even more
outro.
Than normal.
we can do the death metal for you. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good night now.
Thanks so much. You too.